And we're going to begin going down our list. The first is Patrick Kelly. Thank you and welcome.
Well, thank you and good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me. My name is Patrick Kelly, and for the past 15 years I've taught AP US Government at Blythewood High School in Richland 2. I'm also a board member for the Palmetto State Teachers Association. But before I give any feedback on this legislation, I just need to reiterate thank you for holding this hearing, and especially for scheduling this meeting at a time where teachers can participate. Teachers are the foremost experts about what work in our schools, and your willingness to include teacher voice will result in better legislation. Unfortunately, I believe a lot of the frustrations you'll hear this afternoon could have been avoided if teacher voice had been better included from the start of this process. While I know the authors of this bill have heard teacher concerns across the state, as I understand the reporting on the legislation, it was written largely without any direct input from individual teachers or the state teacher associations. This decision has led to some fundamental and dangerous flaws in the legislation that is being touted as a way to address the severe challenges we face in our schools, most notably the teaching shortage crisis in this state. Now, I know that the members of this panel are well familiar with the teaching shortage crisis, but the data is so important that it bears repeating. Sarah last month in their supply and demand report noted that last year 5,300 teachers left our state's classrooms. That's about 10% of our teacher workforce, and a number that far outstrips the number of qualified candidates coming out of our state's teacher preparation programs each year. In response to the data, it's been energizing as a teacher to hear policymakers declare this the year of education, and to hear things like the governor and state superintendent lining up behind a 5% pay increase for teachers. Although I'd note that I think that the PSTA proposal for a 10% pay increase would do a better job bringing teacher salaries back in line to the stagnant growth in real dollars we've experienced in the last 10 years. And I like Mr. Gilliard's proposal of 15% even better. I know the legislation being discussed today has many goals, but ultimately the core starting place for education reform in this state has to be in addressing the teacher shortage crisis. And unfortunately, I believe the legislation before you would be largely ineffective and potentially even harmful in addressing that crisis. I know this because I recently returned from a year working for the United States Department of Education in D.C., where I was tasked with looking at the factors that contribute to teachers leaving the classroom. And to get at the core of that problem, my team talked to a lot of teachers, over 12,000 of them to be precise. And in those conversations, 4 things came up as the biggest reasons why teachers leave the classroom: insufficient pay, insufficient time, lack of adequate systems of support, and lack of respect for the profession. Now, of those 4, this bill does address pay, and in particular, I applaud the increase in starting pay for first-year teachers to a much more livable salary. But I would warn before implementing the proposed changes in the teacher pay scale in this legislation that this panel and the entire legislature engage in a deeper analysis and get teacher input on potential changes. But beyond pay, the bill misses the mark on the other 3 factors that drive teachers out of the classroom. In the fall, I spoke to a Senate panel looking to declutter the lives of teachers, to free up their time. And this bill would unfortunately do exactly the opposite by adding additional layers of state standardized testing that would draw away instructional time, and by failing to address the bureaucratic administrative factors that are overriding teacher instructional and planning time, things like the Read to Succeed recertification requirements. The bill also fails to improve systems of support for teachers. In fact, it'll further erode these systems by creating yet another layer of bureaucratic oversight in the 0 to 20 committee. This committee will inevitably create additional requirements focused on compliance over results, and the trickle-down effect will be felt by every teacher in this state in their classroom. And we don't need another bureaucratic committee to set benchmarks for student achievement in this state. We have it in the form of the Profile of the SC Graduate, a wonderful document that unfortunately our state standardized tests too frequently ignore. But finally, this bill fails to show any real respect for the teaching profession. The lack of respect has been shown in the failure to involve teachers in the creation, but in particular, the erosion of respect rests in the proposal to allow schools rated good or excellent to hire up to 25% of their teaching workforce from non-certified individuals. At the surface, this may sound good, but I don't see any rationale. Non-certified individuals will be more likely to leave the classroom and to not stick. We know this from research when it comes to people that have gone through ALT certification. But at a deeper level, it shows an alarming lack of respect for teaching as a profession. And I would leave this panel with this question. If you were going to have surgery, would you accept surgery from a doctor who was non-certified if the overall hospital was rated excellent? I assume the answer is no. But you're asking our students to do the exact same thing, and this is educational malpractice for students and shows an alarming lack of awareness for the artistry, knowledge, experience, and skills necessary to do great teaching. So I would encourage you to revisit that part of the law, and I thank you for your time.